You ever sit down in a cash game and realize the whole table's made up of pros? That's not as scary as it sounds, because even good pros are still easy to exploit, just not in the way that most players expect. Sure, they follow the charts, they talk theory, but they still make massive mistakes, and almost nobody punishes them. I built a 20-question quiz to see if you can outplay a winning pro, and fair warning, this is not an easy quiz. Even strong winning players may struggle with this. This quiz will expose the exact decisions that separate a small winner from a crusher. I cut my teeth. That's a weird expression, cut my teeth. I cut my teeth playing 5-10 and 10-20 in pro-heavy LA lineups and earned over 7 figures while doing it. This quiz holds up a mirror. If you fail, you'll see what's costing you money and how to fix it. Let's put your game to the test. All right, very first question of the quiz here. We're playing 5-10 2K effective. There is one pro here under the gun. The rest of the table is going to be typical live kind of fishy players. And the pro opens from the low jack to 35. We look down at JJ Reddix here in the hijack. And question number 1, do we call, raise to 105, or raise to 140? And the answer I like here is actually calling, because look at this. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 fish behind us. And the best way we're going to make a lot of money here at this table is by playing pots with the players who are going to make the most amount of mistakes. This is the fish. So when a pro opens from under the gun, we are just not going to want to be 3-betting a lot. Now, this doesn't mean we 3-bet never. If we have aces here, if we have kings, we have top of range, we're probably still winning the most amount of money by just 3-betting with the very top of our range. But when a pro opens and there's a bunch of fish behind, we want to be doing a lot of calling here. So we can't just 3-bet aces and kings, specifically against an aware player, because we're just not going to get paid if we're only 3-betting aces and kings. So I like to implement what's called a polarized 3-bet range, and I very rarely use this live. This is one of the rare situations I will use it. What does polarized mean? It just means we're 3-betting the very top of our range and the very bottom of our range. So my 3-bet range, early versus early against a pro when a bunch of fish are behind, may look something like this. Very top of my range, aces, ace king suited, pocket kings. And then the very bottom of my range would be hands like king jack suited, queen jack suited, jack 10 suited, ace 5 suited. The worst hands we would consider calling with here, these would be our polarized 3-bet bluffs. And you may be thinking, well, jack 10 suited, queen jack suited, these are pretty good hands, but we have to go back to the configuration. And this guy is a pro opening from the low jack, so we're continuing rather tight. King jack, queen jack, jack 10, ace 5, these may be the worst hands that we continue with, so those are the 3-bet bluffs. So pocket jacks squarely in the middle of our range here, so I would just be calling with that hand. All right, next hand here, we're playing 5-10 again. We're going to be playing 5-10 for all these hands because in my maybe controversial opinion, below 5-10, there's just not really many, if any, strong pros. Once you get to 5-10, you start to see some pretty decent players, but below that, the players I would generally just treat as recreational. So in this one, it's going to fold around to the cutoff, who is a pro, and now the cutoff opens to 35. We have ace queen of hearts here on the button. You see we have 2 fish in the blinds, in the small blind and big blind. What do we do in the spot? Once again, do we call, raise to 105, or raise to 140? Well, in this spot, I would actually raise to 140. I know you may be thinking,
Hey, Mark, I thought we were supposed to be playing a polarized range here with fish behind.
And we still are. This is just a much wider configuration. The pro is going to be opening wider, so our polarized 3-bet range will expand. Let me show you. Whereas early versus early, our polarized 3-bet range looks something like this. Late versus late, cutoff versus button, it may look something like this. You see, we're still just 3-betting the very top of our range. Aces, ace king, pocket kings, but now it expands a little. Maybe the ace queen suited, the queens, the jacks are now in there, and the bottom of our range is now much wider as well. See, we're 3-betting maybe the worst ace X, the ace deuce, the ace 6, the worst 9X, some of these suited connectors. Still looking like a very polarized range, but because it's cutoff versus button, ace queen suited is just such a strong hand, really, really close to that top of our range. So even though we're just 3-betting the top of our range against a pro, ace queen suited does make it in there. And you may be thinking, well, why do we want to go bigger here? Why do we want to go 4X in position? Generally, when using a linear range, which means good, better, best, I like to choose kind of a smaller size, maybe 3X, 3.5X, somewhere in that vicinity. And when using a more polarized range where we're repping either very strong or bluffs, I like to choose a bigger size, something around 4X, maybe even 5X in position. Since we are using a polarized range here, I would just tend to go with the bigger size. All right, question number 3 here. This one's going to round out pre-flop, our very last pre-flop question. This time a pro opens on the button and we're in the small blind. blind with pocket sevens. Now with sevens here, do we want to fold, call, or raise to 150? Take 5 seconds and make your decision. Well, in this situation, I would actually want to 3-bet. I'd want to raise to 150. Notice the big blind is also a pro here. So from a button open, I would want to be playing a linear strategy, meaning in this spot, I'm basically going to be playing 3-bet or fold. All of my good, better, and best hands get 3-bet here. Pocket sevens falls into maybe that good range, small blind versus a button open. So I'm just not playing any flats here from the small blind, particularly with a pro behind in the big blind. We just don't want to be doing a lot of calling here because the pro behind in the big blind could just squeeze quite a bit. Or even if the pro behind in the big blind just calls, we're going to be playing monkey in the middle where we're just in the worst position post flop and not going to be a very profitable spot for us. So in this situation, just playing 3-bet or fold, even though a pro is opening. All right, we're going to move along to the flop. This time we open pocket tens from under the gun. A pro defends in the big blind. Flop comes 6-5-3. So low board, very connected. A couple of diamonds here and the pro checks it over. So in this spot, do we check this back to protect our checking range? Do we bet $30 here for a small C bet or go $70 for a big C bet on this board? Take 5 seconds, make your decision. In this situation, in equilibrium, this is a board where we want to play a lot of checks and then some small bets. But in practicality, even against a 5-10 pro, I'm probably just betting my range here on this board for a small size. And the reason being is I just don't think even decent pros are finding enough check raises here with their bluffs. For example, in equilibrium versus a small stab, they're supposed to raise hands like king queen with just the king of diamonds, king 7 of spades for just a naked gut shot, king queen of clubs for just 2 overs and a backdoor flush draw. They're supposed to be very, very aggressive. I do think they find the intuitive bluffs, the big flush draws, the combo draws, pair plus flush draws, but I just don't think they find enough bluffs on this board. And so I think they're going to be making quite a few mistakes versus C-bet. So even against a pretty good pro, I'd probably just be betting my range small here because I think that's where they make the most mistakes. If you want a little more context on this, if you don't believe it, if this just isn't really clicking to you, check out the video I did. I think it was titled "There Are No Good Players in Live Poker," and we looked at a situation exactly like this against winning pros. So don't believe me, just go watch the video. All right, next we're gonna move to an out of position spot on the flop here. So pro opens on the button. We're gonna 3-bet the aces in the small blind. He calls. Flop comes 6-5-4 with a couple of diamonds here. So in this 3-bet pot out of position on the flop as the pre-flop raiser, do we check, bet 100, 1/3 pot, or do we bet 300 here for a very big size? Take 5 seconds, make your decision. Ready, set, go. So this is a spot I would actually be considering checking my range. Generally, you hear me say stuff like, I like to check out of position because players will overstab and telegraph their hand strength with their bet size. Against pros, this is generally not true. They're not going to telegraph their hand strength with their bet size on the flop, right? Pros aren't going to make this egregious mistake. But what I like to think in spots like this is on this board texture against this particular player, where are they going to make the most mistakes? Are they going to make the most mistakes if I C-bet? Or are they going to make the most mistakes if I check? I think they're actually going to make stabbing mistakes still on this board. We're actually supposed to check a lot of strong hands here, and they're supposed to protect their check back range and check back hands like pocket queens occasionally on this board. They're supposed to check back hands like bottom 2 pair, 5-4 suited. That just never happens. Come on. They're supposed to check back pocket sevens for an overpair with an open and straight draw. That just doesn't happen. Come on. So I believe on this type of board that looks quote unquote good for them, that they actually make a lot of betting mistakes when we check to them, and they tend to overstab, thinking this board is good for them, not realizing that if we check here, we can just have a lot of strong hands. So this is one of those situations where I may just check my entire range out of position to a pro. Different reasons why I'm checking against a rec player, but I think in general, this is a spot where they make more mistakes versus a check than versus a bet. All right, let's play another one out of position 3-bet pot. This time we got pocket kings and we 3-bet. The pro on the button calls, and we go to a flop ace king 4. So in this particular spot, once again, are we checking, betting 100 or betting 300? Take 5 seconds, make your decision. Ready, set, go. So this is a spot I'd actually just be range betting here. I'd be betting small with my entire range because this is a board I think they don't really make a ton of mistakes if we check to them, right? If we check to them, they just kind of protect their check range. They'll check back with hands like ace jack or ace five suited, which are supposed to check back a decent frequency. I also think when we check to them, they just don't stab enough, actually. When we check to them on this board, they're supposed to start turning hands like pocket threes with a diamond into a bluff all the time. They're supposed to turn their weak king X into a bluff here and start bluffing with it. They're supposed to turn complete airballs like jack eight of clubs into a bluff here and just start going for the triple barrel. And I think on these ace high boards, they're actually under bluffed. So I think they're going to make more egregious mistakes on this type of board if we bet than if we check. But I think betting here when we have a strong hand ourselves, if they're just not going to overstab, just makes a ton of sense here. And I also think when we have bluffs here just coming out and going bet, bet, bet is the move because they're going to check back some strong hands if we check to them, and then we really only have two streets to get them to fold. Whereas if we just go bet, bet, bet on a board like this, I bet we can get all the king X to fold. I bet we can get some weak ace X to fold a lot of the time. We're just going to get credit. Whereas if we check here, they check back ace X, they check back king X. Going to have a lot harder time getting those hands to fold when we're bluffing. So I think in general, they just play worse versus a range bet on this particular board than they do versus a range check. All right, next let's play a few hands as the pre-flop caller. This time we open pocket sevens. A pro three bets us next to act in the hijack here. We are going to call, and the flop comes 8-6-3. We check it over, and the pro C bets here for $80. And in this spot, do we fold, call, or raise to 240? Take 5 seconds and make your decision. This is actually a spot where I would consider folding right away on the flop. If we look at this configuration, we open low jack, we got 3-bet by a pro from the hijack. I think the 3-bet range is just going to be slightly too value heavy, early versus early, right? Especially if they're aware. Already, this range is supposed to be super, super tight at 200 big blinds in equilibrium. And I think live pros are just even tighter than equilibrium when they 3-bet here, because a lot of equilibrium ranges are 3-bet or fold hijack versus low jack. And I think a lot of pros play with flats. So, I mean, pre-flop, they're probably just too tight. Even if they're playing perfectly pre-flop, getting to this flop in this spot, in this tight of a configuration, pocket sevens here, they're just going to be very, very strong. And pocket sevens here is kind of actually near the bottom of our range. We should have hands like ace high, king high flush draws, hands like pocket eights. And one of the mistakes I see players make is when our range is so tight, every hand starts looking pretty strong. You look at a hand like ace jack of clubs and you're like, well, I have 2 overs with a backdoor, not realizing it in this spot. Pretty much every hand we've got that continues to that 3-bet pre-flop has a little bit of something going on in this flop. So in equilibrium against a small c-bet, pocket sevens is actually folded at a high frequency. Ace jack of clubs is a pure fold. All right, next one here. This time we're going to open deuces in the cutoff, pro 3-bets on the button. And again, if this was low jack versus hijack, we would just fold this, but cutoff versus button, we're continuing all of our pairs here. We are going to call, we go to flop, which comes ace, queen, 4. We check it over, and now the pro bets $80. And in this particular spot, once again, are we folding, calling, or raising to 240? Take 5 seconds and make your decision. So before I tell you the answer here, this is a super, super, super high level concept that really, really separates these small winners from the big ones. I'm actually surprised I'm giving this away for free on YouTube. I usually save stuff like this for Bootcamp. And Bootcamp, by the way, is our 28-day intensive program. We have Zoom calls every single day where we break down real hands and give you strategy for every single situation you will face, whether you're pre-flop, post-flop, in position, out of position, you name it. And it's all based on 50,000 hours of real data. So it's not like you're memorizing charts or studying theory. No, you're actually learning how to beat the players you are playing against every day. Just to be clear, Bootcamp is only for winning players. If you are not winning, that's why we make these videos, to help you get there, right? But if you're already a winning player and want to go from a winner to a big winner much quicker, look, I have no doubt you could get there with a lot of trial and error, but if you want to get there faster, Bootcamp is for you. But anyway, that super high leverage concept that I want to talk about, I would actually be check raising here. And I would be check raising a whole hell of a lot. So let's kind of dig into why. Well, on this ace queen 4 board, you may be thinking, well, this is better for the button. isn't it? And I would ask you, how much do you think the player on the button in this configuration, button versus cutoff, 3-bet pot, ace, queen, 4, two-tone board, how much do you think they should be c-betting here? 100%, 90%, 80%? Give me a number, right? Put a number in your head and just kind of hold it there. Now I'll ask you a follow-up question. How much do you think this board is actually a c-bet by decent pros? I would say that almost all the live hours of poker I've played, 5, 10 pros, 10, 20 pros, they're just c-betting their entire range here. They're just c-betting a lot. But how much this board is actually supposed to be c-bet in equilibrium? Somewhere around 40%. So what does that mean? Why is it only supposed to be c-bet around 40%? Well, the button here just has a ton of hands like pocket 9s, pocket 8s, 7-8 suited, queen 10 suited, queen 9 suited, right? That just can't withstand heat here. Even though on the surface, this board looks quote unquote good for them. If we lock the solver and tell it to assume that the pro on the button is range betting, right? They're gonna play perfectly after they range bet, but they're going to range bet on this board when they're not supposed to. We're allowed to check raise 45% of the time. And here's the key nugget here. When we check raise, if they're range betting, they're supposed to call in equilibrium with hands like pocket 5s with a spade, pocket 6s with a spade, 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, jacks with a spade, all of their queen X, all of these hands are supposed to call our check raise here if they're range betting. My assumption in the spot, they're probably range betting. They're probably under defending massively to a check raise. So this key nugget, this key insight here, when you are in a wide versus wide configuration against a pro, you can just attack the shit out of them and check raise an insane amount of hands, and they're not going to be able to withstand the heat. Now, if they call, they're probably calling tighter than they should, so their range is probably stronger than it should be. So we just give up on a lot of turns with our bluffs. That's okay. But by just check raising here, we can just generate a whole lot of folds that we're not supposed to. This is a super, super important concept. Do not use this against fish, right? Do not use this against fish. This is for use against decent pros. It will print against pros. Next hand, we open pocket 8s from the low jack, pro and the hijack, 3 bets back around us. We're gonna call here. Look at that sweet baby there. We flop top set, we check it over, pro goes $80, and in this spot, do we call, raise to 240, or check raise to 300? Take 5 seconds to make your decision. All right, so this is a spot where I would just fast play right now and actually check raise to the big size. My reasoning here is the same reason why I would fold red pocket 7s in this spot. When a pro 3 bets early versus early and then c bets on this board, their range is just going to be too strong. So what does that mean? Well, a couple of things. Number one, when their range is very strong here and we check raise, particularly to this big egregious size, they're supposed to start folding hands like pocket 9s, pocket 10s, pocket jacks right away. Does that happen? No. Probably not. The other thing here, why I want to fast play on this board, because their range is so strong, they just don't have a lot of natural bluffs. And when a range looks strong, it's hard, even for a decent pro, to find a lot of the unintuitive bluffs. So by just trapping here, by just slow playing, they're not going to put enough money in for us when they're bluffing, because it's hard to find the bluffs here in this configuration. They will just be under bluffing, and they're probably under folding to a check raise. They're probably just calling too much because their range is too strong. Like in this last example on this ace queen 4 board, their range is too weak. So they are over folding to a check raise because they're supposed to call with weak hands that are unintuitive. In this situation, they're supposed to fold strong hands that are unintuitive. So when we have a strong hand and we can cooler the strong parts of their range, I just want to start putting in money right here, right now. Next hand, we raise pocket 10s from the cutoff, pro 3 bets on the button. This guy getting on my nerves, man. He's really pushing it. Definitely a case to be made for 4 betting here. Out of position, I like to go linear. This hand probably a mix. I would probably lean towards just putting this in the 4-bet range here. But for the sake of this hand, we're just gonna call. We go to a flop, which comes queen 10-4. We check it over. He goes $80, small c-bet here. And in this particular spot, do we call, raise to 240 or raise to 300? Make your decision. Ready, set, go. All right, so this is a spot where I would actually trap. This is one of the rare spots where I would trap against a pro. My reason being, we're in a wide versus wide configuration. I think he's probably c-betting too much here on this double Broadway board. And on this board, in this configuration, going to be easy to find bluffs, right? He's probably got hands like Jack 9 suited, King Jack suited, maybe all of the Ace Jack off, 8-9 suited. There are just a lot of intuitive bluffs in this configuration that he may just run it with. And if he does have a hand like Ace Queen or Pocket Kings or something like that, this is a situation where a good pro is just gonna put the money in for us. So his value hands are gonna put the money in for us. His bluffs are gonna put the money in for us. Let him continue putting in the money for us, right? This is a configuration where I may not want to raise with a lot of my strong hands because a pro is quite capable of value betting thinly and bluffing. They're gonna have a lot of natural bluffs in this configuration. So this may be the one where I want to work in some traps. All right, let's play some turn spots. This one, a pro is gonna open on the button. We defend in the big blind here. Ace Jack 7, we check it over and he actually checks it back here. We go to a turn, which is an 8. We pick up a double belly buster. And in this spot here on the turn, do we check, bet 35, or come out with an overbet and bet 100 here on the turn? Take 5 seconds, make your decision. So in this particular spot, I would actually come out and check here on the turn. What is our opponent's range when they check back the flop here, 200 big blinds deep? Well, they're not gonna have very strong hands like pocket jacks, ace jack, pocket sevens, 200 big blinds deep in a single raise pot. A good pro is just gonna start putting in money with the top of their range. They're not gonna have airball bluffs here, right? 4-5 suited on an ace jack high board. A pro is probably just going to start thinking,
Hey, this board's good for me. Let's start bluffing.
They're probably gonna bluff their zero equity bullshit on the flop, right? So what do they have when they check back? Well, they've got showdown value, right? They have hands like ace X, jack X, pocket kings. And if we just come out and bet here, what are they going to do with a hand like ace 5? Let's say we come out and bet the turn. We go for a big bet, they're gonna call. Now we go to a river. Even if we go with the overbet here on this river, if they check back the flop with a hand like ace 5, ace 4, ace 9 suited, they were planning to check back to pot control so they could click call, call. We just make their lives very, very easy. This is one of my favorite concepts, particularly against pros. It's called delayed gratification. Just because we have queen high doesn't mean we need to come out and bet now. Because what happens if we check? Their ace 4 suited is just gonna bet now. Even a hand like pocket kings or king jack is just gonna come out and bet here now on the turn after we've checked twice. And the best way to maximize fold equity, go for that turn check raise, right? Turn check raise is under bluffed. Pros know that turn check raises are under bluffed. On top of that, even more importantly, their range is capped, crippled, weak. They're not going to be able to withstand heat, and the best way to apply heat is to make them play for all the money. We put in that big boy turn check raise. If they call, we follow up with the jam on the river. This is the way to make them get real squeamish with a hand like top pair. They planned on just clicking call, call. They didn't plan on facing a huge check raise and then a jam. This is the way to get them to fold hands like ace 4. Now, you may be thinking that's all well and good, but what if we check to them on the turn and they check back? How do we play the river? Well, I'm gonna ask you. And now on this river, do we check, bet 35, or bet 200? Take 5 seconds, make your decision. So on this river, I would actually come out and bet 200. Here is why. After they check back the flop and check back the turn, what is their range? Well, it's probably just going to be weak showdown value, right? If they had an ace, they would certainly bet on the turn, if not the flop sometimes. If they had a strong jack, they would just come out and bet on the turn. If they had a hand like kings or queens, they'd probably come out and bet on the turn. So what is their range after checking back twice? Well, it's gonna be hands like 7x, pocket 6s, pocket 9s. It's going to be relatively weak showdown value. And if we check on this river, what are they going to do? They're going to check back again and we're going to lose. We're not going to be able to get in a check raise here. But the best way to make a hand like pocket 6s, pocket 5s, 7x here feel very uncomfortable is just go for this more than 2x pot overbet here on this river. This is the way to get weak showdown value to fold. All right, we're going to move along to some river spots, but first we're going to play this hand from pre-flop just to see if you guys have been paying attention. A pro opens and we are next to act with a hand like ace 5 of diamonds. Assume the rest of the table is Rex or fish. What should we do here next to act? Do we call, raise to 105, or raise to 140? Well, remember, in this spot, we want to be playing a polarized 3-bet range, so this would be a 3-bet. We want to use that big size representing a polar range. Remember, early versus a pro, polar range going to look something like this. Ace 5 suited right in there. Okay, so I told you we were going to play river spots. Let's move along all the way to the river now. We flop a monster combo draw. We are going to c-bet. Pro is going to call. We go to a turn. It doesn't change anything. We are going to fire big on this turn. Pro calls again. Go to a river, which pairs the board. Pro checks it over. 3 options on this river. We check it back, we bet 500, a small bet, or we jam all in. Take 5 seconds, make your decision, ready, set, go. This is a tricky one. This is a really, really tricky one. In this spot, I would actually just be checking back and giving up. And you may be wondering,
Well, Mark, don't you want to fire the big boy bluffs?
I love firing the big boy bluffs, but this is not the spot to fire the big boy bluff. We are in a tight configuration. This is low jack versus hijack. And when a pro calls twice on this board, their range is going to be very condensed to hands like 8s, 9s, 10s, jacks, even queens and occasionally kings here in this early versus early config. And in equilibrium, because their range is so strong, they're supposed to fold strong hands. So 8s through jacks are folded at a reasonable frequency. I think on this board, when everything bricks, when the board pairs on the river, I don't think those hands get folded enough. And so I think because the pro population is under folding here, I would just be under bluffing. I would not be firing this river because I don't expect pros to fold hands like pocket jacks or pocket 10s on this particular river. So I would just be giving up. All right, next one here, we open 9-7 of clubs on the button. Another river spot, but we're gonna play the turn as well. So pro checks it over. We're gonna c-bet here, open-ended with a backdoor flush draw. Pro calls. We go to a turn, which is an offsuit 4. He checks it over. And if you watch this channel at all, this one's gonna kind of be a freebie. So on this turn, do we bet 50, bet 135, or bet 270? Take 5 seconds, make your decision. Ready, set, go. So on this turn, our opponent is going to be relatively capped and inelastic. What does that mean in English? Capped simply means they're not going to have the top of their range. If they had a strong hand like 8s, 6s, 3s, 8-6 suited, even pros are going to check raise at a very high frequency on this wet and dynamic board. But they can still have hands like ace high flush draws, ace 8 suited, pocket 5s. These hands are going to be very inelastic. So because they are capped and inelastic simply means price insensitive. They don't care if we bet big or small, they're still calling. So because they are price insensitive, I would choose a big boy size on this turn, going maybe 2x pot. Yes, you are allowed to bet bigger than the size of the pot. That's why it's called no limit hold'em. A lot of people don't understand this. You are in fact allowed to put a bigger denomination of chips into the pot than the current pot size is. I feel like people are confused by this, but it is technically legal. It is within the rules. We're gonna go with the overbet here. The pro calls, we go to a river, which is a 4. He checks it over, and on this river, do we check back and give up? Do we bet 270 for a small bet? Or do we go all in for the big boy overbet bluff? Take 5 seconds, make your decision. This is when I would run it, right? We're in a wide versus wide configuration. I would go for the big boy overbet bluff. If we look at equilibrium here, they're supposed to call pure when they have a hand like 8-7 of diamonds. They're also supposed to call pure when they have a hand like king 6 of clubs. So they're supposed to call with some relatively weak hands here in equilibrium, and I would say those hands get folded at a reasonable frequency. 8x and 6x on this river get folded. The other thing is here in equilibrium, they're supposed to trap sometimes with pocket 6s, 6-3 suited, right? And I would just argue that doesn't really happen. They tend to raise, just like recreational players, they tend to raise their strong stuff a little bit too much on the flop. So getting to this river, their range is a little bit weaker than equilibrium, and they probably fold a little bit more than equilibrium. So I think this is a really, really good spot to just run it here with 9 high, even though the board pairs. I would just empty the clip here, go for the 2.5x pot. It's legal, guys. It's illegal. I promise. We did try it. It's pretty good. All right, let's play some river spots as the pre-flop caller. Pro opens on the button. We defend with ace-6 of hearts. We flop middle pair. He c-bets. We call. Turn is a 4 of diamonds. We check. He double barrels. He goes. This is the big size for pros, right? A lot of people, again, they just don't understand. You are allowed to bet bigger than the pot, but this is the big size. So we're gonna call here on the turn. Queen, a brick here. Kind of a relatively bricky card on the river. We check it over, and the pro goes 250 on this river. In this spot, do we fold, call, or raise to 1,000? Take 5 seconds, make your decision. So this spot against a pro, I'd be very interested in bluff catching. I would call here quite a bit. The reason being, we're in a wide versus wide configuration. This is where pros find the bluffs. There's a lot of natural bluffs here. 9-7, 9-10, all the flush draws that bricked, all the 7x that bricked, all the 5x that bricked, right? There's just a ton of natural bluffs getting to this spot in a wide configuration, and they may just even be running it with an air ball here occasionally like 2 overs with nothing going on, this is the spot, wide versus wide, button versus big blind, where pros will find the bluffs. I find this is just a pretty profitable spot to bluff catch. When you have a wide range, you have to modulate, right? You have to turn down. You have to take some of the bluffs and just give up with the bluffs. But when we're in a tight configuration, you have to pull bluffs out of your ass. You have to turn showdown value into a bluff. But in this spot, you actually have to give up. You have to let off the throttle quite a bit because you have too many bluffs in this spot. So I think in this spot, pros just run it with all the hands that just don't really have showdown value on this river. I think they just run it because they give us a good price, because they don't know that you're allowed to overbet and put in all the money here. I think in this spot, like, we're just going to be good a lot of the time. I think we're going to have a very profitable bluff catch here. Next situation, we open the cutoff. Pro 3 bets on the button. Once again, this hand can be 4-bet at a decent frequency. I like to go linear, suited broadways, pocket 8s, pocket 9s plus here. But for the sake of this hand, we're just going to call. We go to a flop. We check it over. We flop middle pair. We call. Turn. We check it over. He goes with the, I don't know, what is this? The 60% reg size, 65. I'm not good at math. We call again. We go to a river. We check it over. He empties the clip here. He goes 600 on this river. And our options here are to fold, call, or raise all in. Take 5 seconds. Make your decision. Once again, wide versus wide spot, cutoff versus button. It is a 3-bet pot, right? It is a 3-bet pot, so a little bit tighter than button versus big blind, but it is the widest spot as far as 3-bet pots go. I think this spot is going to be over bluffed. We talked about these double Broadway boards, lots of intuitive bluffs here, especially button versus cutoff, the Jack 9, the King Jack, the 8-9 suited. A lot of players here, I think, just run it a lot of times when they have hands like Ace Jack or Ace King, even though those hands are supposed to be like checkbacks on the flop, kind of give up, kind of realize your showdown value in a wide versus wide spot. I think pros just run it a little bit too much with those hands that do have a smidge of showdown value. So I think this spot, once again, going to be a pretty profitable bluff catch. I would call in this spot. All right, next one, we open Ace Jack, pro 3 bets on the button. Once again, could be a 4-bet here, but we're playing passive today. I want to show you guys post-flop spots. So we're just going to call. We flop top pair. We check it over. He c-bets. We call. Turn is a 4. We check it over. He doubles. We call. River's a 4, pairing the board. We check it over, and he empties the clip here. Goes big on this river. Once again, in this spot, do we fold, call, or raise all in? Take 5 seconds. Make your decision. And you may be thinking, aha, Mark, I finally got you. Wide versus wide spot. I get it. We should call here. And I would say, no, I would just be folding in this spot. And the difference in this spot is the ace high board. Even in the wide versus wide configurations, the ace high boards tend to be under bluffed. Harder to find the bluffs on the ace high boards. The other board that's under bluffed, by the way, if you want one more little nugget, is the triple Broadway boards. The ace high boards, the triple Broadway boards, just harder to find the bluffs. These spots in almost every configuration are going to be under bluffed by pros. Even though we've got top pair, our kicker plays here in the spot, I would just be folding because look, they're supposed to triple hands like Queen Jack of spades. That hand's supposed to start a c-bet on the flop, double, and then triple. Queen Jack of spades, nothing going on. Queen 10 of hearts, King 10 of hearts. Almost all of the busted diamond draws, right, are just supposed to triple barrel here on this ace high board. And I would argue that just doesn't really happen, right? They don't find the air balls with Queen Jack of spades. So I would say the spot is under bluffed, even though it is a wide configuration. I would fold. Finally, let's add a little spice. We're gonna play a 4-bet pot here. So pro opens, we are going to 3-bet with pocket queens in the small blind here. Pro is going to 4-bet in the cutoff, and we got queens. This is against an aggressive pro. So we're gonna call. We go to a flop, 7-4 deuce. We check it over. He c-bets quarter pot. We call. Turn is a 9. We check it over. 30% pot here now on the turn. We call again. We go to a river. We check it over, and he jams. He puts in all the money. So on this river, do we fold, call, or take off our pants and roll around on the table while giggling gleefully? Take 5 seconds. Make your decision. So this is a spot I would actually fold. And I know this looks crazy, kind of like folding here with queens, right? Because what if they're just running it with ace king? What if they're bluffing us with ace king? Well, in this spot, they're supposed to triple barrel with hands like King Jack suited, King 10 suited, Ace Jack suited, Ace 4 suited, which has a pair, by the way. This hand is still supposed to be triple barreled, right? They're supposed to 4-bet pre-flop all of these hands, which I would argue they don't. They're supposed to empty the clip with all of these hands. Two things have to be true. They have to be 4-betting a polarized range in position. They have to be finding the bluffs here. And they just have to be emptying the clip when they do have those bluffs. I would argue this just doesn't happen enough. It just doesn't actually happen. It happens in theory. It doesn't actually happen in real games. So I would fold in this spot, just figuring they're not finding enough bluffs, even if they they turn up here with ace king occasionally. They don't have the king jacks, they don't have the king 10 suited, they don't have the ace 4 suited, so I would fold. So if you're here, if you're watching a video on how to beat up pros, you're probably a winning player trying to be a big winning player. And look, I have no doubt you can get there on your own. Plenty of players have, right? But if you want to speed up that process, then our 28-day bootcamp may be for you. And just to be clear, it is expensive because this is not some course designed to teach you how do I play pocket jacks and then give you a video and a PDF. No, this is intensive training with small groups. And I believe the reason we've grown so fast is because we actually give a shit about helping players transform their games. And if it was cheap, there's just no way we could give the amount of time and personalized feedback and individualized attention to each and every player sustainably. Anyway, if it sounds at all interesting to you, check out our 28-day bootcamp. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please put your score below in the comments. Be honest, what did you get? This was a very, very tough quiz, but I hope it helps you and turns you into the biggest boy possible. Thank you guys, and have a gentle day.